The word I'm looking for. Bit 5. Carry On by TinyButFierce. 1. Peter was in the final year of high school when he received the news. Tony and Pepper were having a baby, and Peter wasn't allowed to tell anyone. Peter went out anonymously at night all the time, and he had somehow managed to keep that a secret from everyone except... Okay, maybe he had revealed it to a bit too many people, but oh well. Anyways, apparently they were worried about security and the stocks and yada 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 adult things. Peter was personally of the opinion that they should have announced it immediately, but Pepper's glare had convinced him not to do it for them. About 5 months in, Tony revealed that Peter was going to have a sister. Then they sat down for a talk. Apparently, Tony thought that Peter was going to be jealous of his new sister, and Tony wanted to reassure him that, even though things wouldn't be the same, he still loved both of them equally. Peter didn't know why Tony would think that. Wasn't it obvious that Peter was excited? Besides, he was going off to college in a year. Things would have to change anyways. Peter sometimes seemed to be the one who was most excited about the baby. Tony just seemed nervous, and Pepper spent a lot of time throwing up. But at least, because it was Pepper, he threw up in an elegant fashion. When 9 months came along, Peter was one of the first people to see the baby. Morgan was awesome. As a gift, Peter got her a Spider-Man onesie and gave Pepper and Tony a coupon for his babysitting skills. He was an expensive hire, but for Morgan, the discount would be worth the cut to his profits. It took 2 months before Pepperoni had to go to a gala, and Peter was left alone with Morgan. Boy, did he have a plan. Friday and him had organised it over the course of a week, slowly buying the necessary items in quantities that Tony wouldn't notice. They had organised a fashion show. That's right, Peter had got multitudes of adorable baby outfits, and Morgan agreed, with various babbles, to be a willing participant. In the expanse of 3 hours, Morgan was a dragon, a penguin, a turkey, Princess Leia, Rutherford's model of an atom, and finally, Peter's favourite, Tony Stark. That's right, Peter had gone out and gotten a very small suit and a very small snazzy sunglasses. He also got a very small stick-on of the Tony Stark beard. It was amazing. Morgan did the exact same glare that Tony gave him all of the time, and the photo looked wonderful. He texted Pepper a photo and then went to the work of getting Morgan ready for bed. 2 minutes into that, he got a text from Tony. Tony, why is Pepper crying? Peter, she choked on her drink and now she's crying. Or maybe laughing. I can see that you texted her something, but she won't show me the screen. Peter, what did you do? I don't know what you're talking about. Tony, I don't believe that for a second. Peter, image sent. Look, it's you. Tony, I'm not sure whether to be proud or insulted. Pepper looked at me and started laughing again. People are staring. Tony ended up denying him babysitting privileges for a week, but Pepper reinstated him after she looked at the pictures again. Peter made it his phone background. 2. Peter was aghast the first time that Morgan threw a Cheerio at him. Then he realised the potential. You see, Morgan was the perfect weapon for him to use in his perpetual war of Steve Rogers' torment. It only took a week for him to find an opportunity to enact his master plan. Tony had a meeting at the compound with a bunch of UN people, so Peter got to ride along in order to watch Morgan while Tony was doing the whole politics thing. Steve was perfectly placed in the living room, reading a book with his shield right next to him. Peter walked in and waved at Steve, Morgan perched in his other arm. Hey Peter, Steve said. How's college been treating you? It's been treating me. I'm on break right now. Hey, do you think you could watch Morgan for a second? And then, before Steve could have a moment to protest, he dropped Morgan down right next to the super soldier. He made a noise and batted her arms up and down. They stared at each other as Peter walked out the room and Friday pulled up a screen for him to watch the situation. Steve smiled awkwardly. Hello, kiddo. Morgan gurgled and reached for his shield. Steve quietly picked it up and put it next to her. While staring directly into Steve's eyes, she curled her hand around the outside and started chewing on the edge. Steve looked at her in silence. Morgan looked at Steve. Morgan continued to chew on Steve's shield. Peter almost died of laughter in the hallway outside. After he recovered a bit of his dignity, he decided to enact Phase 2. He ran back into the room with a bag of Cheerios. "Oh hey, I forgot," he paused. "Is Morgan eating your shield?" "Yeah." "Huh. Well, this should help." He handed Steve the bag. "Let's give her some of these to eat and she'll stop doing that. I'll be back in a few." He ran out of the room again and turned on the screen. Steve pulled a Cheerio out of the bag and offered it to Morgan. She looked up and stopped chewing on the shield, reaching her hand out for the circle of oat. He put it in her hand and she looked at it for a second before pausing and throwing it at Steve. He gave her another Cheerio. He threw it again at him and gurgled. He sighed and tried again. This one hit him in the face. Tony walked past Peter in the hallway, who was on the ground laughing, and stepped into the room to see the aftermath. The floor was completely covered in Cheerios, a super soldier was on the edge of crying in frustration, and Morgan was happily chewing on Cap's shield. 3. Morgan was 5 years old when Tony retired from being Iron Man. After sustaining another injury in battle, his whole family sat him down and gave him an intervention. Somehow they managed to convince him, but Peter personally thought the only reason he stopped was due to Morgan walking into the intervention because of a nightmare. She requested juice pops, and Tony's smile said it all. A party was thrown in his honour, and everyone came. Everyone. Even people who they hadn't invited. Thaddeus Ross made his way into the party, and Peter was the first to notice his arrival. He looked for Tony and saw him by the edge of the lake, having a fun time speaking with Rhodey. So Peter decided to intervene. He grabbed Morgan, told her a few things, and pushed her towards Ross in order to cause chaos. She wandered over and stopped in front of him. He grimaced. "Hello, child. My name's Morgan. I know, I've been keeping up to date with your father's activities." "It's creepy." "No, it's not. My brother says you're an asshole." Ross's face turned red. "Now, young lady, don't call me a lady. That's not a good word to use." Morgan giggled. "Sit." "No, don't say." Peter walked over. "Ross, did I just hear you teaching swear words to a 5-year-old? The general stammered. "Absolutely not, I would never." Morgan tugged on Peter's sleeve. "Sit." Peter gasped. "Don't say that word. What did Dad say about that word?" "Only Mommy can use that word?" "Exactly." Peter turned back towards Ross. "I don't think Tony will be very happy if he hears you teaching Morgan such language. You should get out of here." Ross stared at Peter before glancing down at Morgan, who smiled adorably at him. The general nodded. "I'd best be going then." As he walked away, Morgan tugged on Peter's sleeve again. "Juice pop." +1. So Peter bought a pet tarantula. Tony hated the thing and wouldn't even go near it, but Morgan thought it was cute. He seemed to think that everything fuzzy was cute, and honestly, so did Peter. It just so happened that Thor and Loki were visiting that weekend, and the two siblings saw it as a perfect opportunity. They put a little camera on Shelob, and Morgan went to go execute the plan with the spider cupped in her hands. She kicked Loki's door, which swung open to reveal the disgruntled mage. Morgan smiled. "Hi, Mr. Loki." He sniffed. "Thorn of Stark, aren't you too young to be wandering around by yourself?" "I'm 7. "So you are. What do you want?" She held her hand out. "Pete was turned into a spider." "Excuse me?" She opened her hands. "We didn't want to tell Dad. He would be mad." "So, this creature here is your brother?" "Yeah. Can you fix him?" Loki frowned. "Possibly." Morgan smiled and dropped the spider into Loki's hand. "Okay, thanks, Mr. Loki." He skipped off. Peter and Morgan watched through Shelob's live stream as Loki stared at the spider for a solid hour. He tried a few spells, with no results, read a few books, that gave him no answers, and fed the spider a cricket, a relic of disgust. He finally threw his hands up in the air and scooted Shelob into a bucket. My apologies, son of Stark. It would be in your best interest to get used to this form. Friday split the screen so they could walk down the hallway, Tony sitting in the kitchen. Hey, Reindeer Games, Tony said. Loki placed the bucket on the counter and pushed it toward Tony. I'm afraid that I cannot fix your son. Tony blinked and looked into the bucket. That's a spider. Yes. Tony opened his mouth to speak right as Peter and Morgan walked into the room. The two adults stared at them. Peter waved. Hey, Dad. Hey, Mr. Loki. Morgan and I are here to make some sandwiches. Loki stared at the two and looked back down at the spider. Then, without saying anything, he turned and walked out of the room. Tony smirked as he realized what had happened. I'm so proud,